Ding ding, round 2 of the console generational war has begun, or at least kicked off again, with Sony coming out with their second PlayStation event or showcase, and this time the price, the most important part of any console launch. And we now know that we are looking at a $399 or $349 and $499 console range from digital to disc. Now, you know where I stand, you know my views, you've seen the videos before. So, price is good, it's exactly as expected, and we are now looking very close to what the Xbox did. So, glad that we've got all the price and shenanigans out of the way. And alongside that, those important launch times. Harking back to the olden days where we had to wait around in Europe for, God knows, a year, maybe sometimes longer for the launch to actually land. Sometimes America were behind Japan. At least it's only a mere week this time, which it was in the last console generation as well. So that's already a good thing. A little bit weak for us Europeans and UK people to have to wait another week from the American cousins, but there you go. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Lots of other countries are also affected, mainland Europe largely, and the Middle East. So there are places where they won't be playing PlayStation come November the 12th, but you will be playing it everywhere come November the 19th. So long as you were lucky enough to secure yourself a pre-order, which went up yesterday and probably have sold out around now. If not, they're going to get very close. I'm sure there's more stock coming, but launch day might be a little bit of a tough ask at this point if you haven't already secured yourself a console. So moving into the games and what they showed, well, the presentation didn't actually have that many surprises. In fact, a lot of it was what we kind of expected. Longer gameplay reveals, longer demonstrations of known games, and a couple of little teasers at the end. I'm not going to go through the whole review and just watch the show with you whilst I talk, because that's kind of pointless and boring. If you haven't watched the show, go over and watch that first. It's the most important and best place to see all the information directly. Here I'm going to touch on the main games, the main areas, some details, some information that you may or may not have seen, and things that came out closely after the event. So we kicked off with the big SpiderMan event and the preview of Miles Morales and the gameplay and the 4K crisp goodness and ray tracing beauty, and the image quality is nice and sharp, and it actually kicks off one of the issues that I mentioned at the time and tweeted yesterday about these streams. Companies really need to work on their streaming quality. It's just really poor. You're literally watching two separate visualizations of a game. It's exactly the same with the Xbox event. Games look far worse than when you manage to get hold of the 4K resolution download, and everything looks a lot crisper, a lot cleaner, and far more impressive than when you watch it on the stream, where it's just low bit rate, clunky, colours banding everywhere, and everything looks really blurry. So definitely check out the 4K videos over on the PlayStation channel, and obviously you can see good quality ones here, but it's not direct footage, so it's not as good as the ones you can watch over there. It also masks the frame rate, which you don't get visibility of, but here we can, and we can see that on this particular demonstration of Spider-Man, we can see that it runs at 4K and 30 FPS with all that ray tracing goodness turned on. And that obviously gives you reflections in non-planar reflections on both vertical and horizontal planes, so you can see people in reflections of buildings. It's in gameplay, it's in the cinematics, and it really works exceptionally well, but it is 30 FPS. It also looks to be running a very slight dynamic resolution scaling here, so I caught some 3520 by 1980 points. It's very, very minor, and that could be ironed out at the end, but I'll be surprised if they're not using a dynamic solution to both deliver that 4K 30 ray traced options, and maybe even a dynamic solution with ray tracing turned on, which offers a dynamic 1440 60 FPS with ray tracing active. All those options are there. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see once we get final code. What is clear is the visual quality is really high. It's got that sharp, clean image that the original title had on the PS4 and the Pro. It's got the same animation routines, and it looks very bright, very vibrant. It's got that cartoon look, and the aesthetic is very, very similar from the previous Insomniac game. And in terms of the lighting as well, there are definitely some elements of lots of GI bounce and lots of light sources across the entire title, and lots of dynamic lights used regularly. So they might even also be using that ray tracing for more than just the reflections. They might be using it for some GI bounces. They might even be using it for shadows, because there is quite some sharp and clean detailed self-shadowing and obviously other obscurant shadows here. So there is elements here that could show, but it's too early to really dive into that in any great depth. It certainly looks great, and they really are using the hardware well to push that visual quality in these early days. But obviously this also means that it's launching on the PS4, which did create some hoo-ha yesterday I saw online. And even though I didn't really want to talk about it now, and I'll talk about it at the end of the video, that there's many reasons to this. At the end of the day, Spider-Man looked excellent. The demonstrations, the gameplay shows that they really have taken that original implementation from the previous game and improved it. There definitely are areas here that can be improved in this generation in terms of the PS5 version over the PS4, even if it's the same game and engine. So one of the things I touched on in my original review was when you go indoors and outdoors, you get this complete white and low and black screen as it moves into the areas. I pretty much can confirm this will not be present in this version on the PS5. On top of that, I'm pretty sure that the traversal will be quicker in this version than it will be in the PS4, and I'm sure that the LOD and other elements will be improved as well. So there's going to be no more subway rides, which will likely all be present on the PS4 version. So you will get enhancements over and above just the visual enhancements and the frame rate enhancements that this version offers. It will offer much more. It doesn't mean that it couldn't go further. Of course it could. But generations don't need to reinvent the wheel right at the start of them. That's almost impossible to do due to the amount of time and effort put into it. And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing cross-generation titles. I did just say I'm not going to go into that until the end of the video, but I've just got into it. So that's pretty much it. At the end of the day, at the start of a generation, teams are still getting used to the hardware, what they can do, how they can utilize it. So this is a classic example on this and a few others, but I'm pretty sure once we're into 2021, we're not going to see any first-party titles, or stress first-party titles, that are going to be cross-generation. And remember, a lot of the third-party teams are also delivering third-party titles. It doesn't mean you're ruining the game. I can understand why people are frustrated because of the way it was messaged, but it's a couple of games across that generation, and the reasons why, ROI, the return on the investment, the fact that it takes time to get used to it and work your tools up to new hardware, and the fact that you don't make a game of this quality in likely the last 18 months, of which they would have had real genuine hardware internally to work on and target their development towards. So that's one of the big reasons why. Spider-Man looks excellent, looks as good as ever, and if you love the previous Spider-Man, I'm sure you're going to love this. It does come with two versions, $70 for the fully Ultimate Edition that includes a remastered version of the original Spider-Man game from 2018 with all the enhancements we've just mentioned, or this version which is just $49.99, so whatever that works out in pounds, we'll have to wait and see. And obviously there's an upgrade option from the PS4, but you don't get the enhanced version of the PS4 version unless you buy the PS5 version, which is the one that comes with the enhancements. So again, the messaging, it does need to be refined a little bit.
I can stop this!
Probably a good time to move back into the actual important part and the hardware and what you actually get. So we got a full view of the back of the console now, so we can see a little bit more and understand what's on there. No optical output, the same as the Series X, so that's obviously very old school now, but it seems to be dying out, which is a shame because I use optical myself, my sound system, but there you go, there are splitters, there are options. It's not exactly the end of the world, but these things have to be sacrificed for cost reasons, so it always happens at some point. At the back of the console, we can see that we've got a HDMI 2.1 connection port on there and obviously USB as well. Two USB 3.1 connections and obviously an RJ45 LAN gigabit cable, and at the front we've got a USB and a USB-C connector. I'm not sure whether that's 3.1 USB next to the USB-C, but in all likelihood it is. It wouldn't make sense to have a retrospective USB 2 or something, but you never know. I'm not going to commit to it yet unless something officially has been released that I've missed, but so far you've got three USB ports, a USB-C connector and your standard HDMI out. So not a lot here, not a lot to get excited about, but there you go. We now know what you can plug it into and what it connects to.
If our positions were switched, would our fates be different?
Next up was the surprise announcement from Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, and this shows off that RE Engine has been improved, enhanced and pushed out, ready to tackle the next generation of hardware both on PC and consoles with full ray tracing goodness. This means we're seeing ray traced lighting, ray traced shadows and ray traced reflections, and this also means that we are seeing a 1080 60 mode or a 4K 30 mode, so that gives you an idea of just how much impact ray tracing has on the hardware. Now, this was actually announced and covered by Capcom themselves. I got the information directly from them, but also they put a video out a little later, I don't know if it was last night or this morning, which covers the game a little bit. I love the director's faint, faux kind of excitement in terms of how he's talking about the power of the next generation. It did give me a smile. I love the kind of humour that he put in there. So the quality is very good. You can see really good examples in this video. Obviously, again, it's using horizontal, vertical reflections. Everything's being casted and reflected back from objects you can't see off screen. It's got much sharper and more diffuse shadows, so penumbra and umbra edges, soft shadow edges, feathered edges on shadows, and obviously on top of all that, it improves the lighting and reflections in terms of areas where light's beaming through and light's bouncing off of areas. And then it's also ramped up the game to increase the quality of the amount of enemies, impact and visual effects in the title when you're playing on the newer consoles. Now, contrary to something I've seen online as well, this does fully support the Series X and the Series S, including ray tracing. This is directly from Capcom's information that they've given me. So it's a patch that's going to be downloaded to those versions for you to be able to use those areas, and I think it's coming as an update DLC in terms of the additional benefits for PC as well, the virtual characters and their extra stuff, or if you've got it on PS4 you can get that as well. So the Series S will support these, but it probably highlights one of the disadvantages of the Series S. If you're running all of these things at 1080-60 on the Series X and the PS5, that means the Series S is probably going to have to run sub 1080 at 30 to get anywhere near running all these effects, unless they just sacrifice the quality of those and all other areas. So it's got basically a 1080-60 mode for all the ray tracing turned on, a 4K 30 mode for all the ray tracing turned on, or you turn the ray tracing off and you get a dynamic 4K up to 120 FPS. There's that 120 FPS, which I knew would start being a big push at the start of the generation. Don't expect it to last, people, but do expect it to be a big push over the next 6 to 9 months.
69 months? No, 6 to 9 months.
And again, as I covered in my development video, this is what I mean by APIs and engines. If you expose that to the hardware, then the engine itself can just have a patch to push out to that hardware without requiring an entirely new binary to be downloaded. So this is an update that's coming for the Series S, and it is one that's going to be delivered on the PS5. So again, more ray tracing, more Dante, more killing, more devil. You can't say fairer than that.
Devil May Cry.
Next up, from the RE engine, enhanced with ray trace goodness and more particle effects, is Resident Evil 8. Now, I hope this doesn't get claimed you actually see this, because last time I did it, Capcom claimed it. But again, the enhancements here, the RE engine looks superb. A native 4K here on the video footage, so again, don't panic. It is running 4K frame rate. Again, it's 30 FPS, so not sure whether or not it'll be 60. I'll be surprised if it's not 60, but it is an early demonstration. I'm not seeing any ray trace reflections. I'm not seeing anything obvious here that's using ray tracing. It's just very clean, very crisp, sharp imagery, great animation, great materials. The photogrammetry they use is superb, and it really stands out in a title like Resident Evil because it's all about the horror. I love the fact that they've got that beautiful mixture between the Resident Evil 4 Village and this new title, alongside the gun salesman there with his little reference of smoking his cigarette and window shopping. I love all that, and I love the fact that it still looks as good, great, and somber and dark as ever. And I really am looking forward to the fact that they'll still be pushing a VR mode here, because it's one of the standout titles on the PS4 and the PSVR. So having this on PS5, even with the same headset, but likely with an improved one coming this generation as well, then the visual quality is really going to scare the bejesus out of you. Just imagining what they can deliver with that, and the patents that they've put together for Vivative Viewing on the PS5 really suggests that they're going to push hard on the PSVR this generation. Even though they're not mentioning it now, it's all about focusing your message, ironically, and not overwhelming your audience. So I'm sure there's more to come on the VR stage, but I'm really excited to be covering that once I get my hands on the PS4, to cover the PS5, to cover what VR is going to improve just by using the exact same headset, sticking it on your head, playing the same games, and just see what those boost modes cover. And it's a shame that we didn't see anything about what that's going to cover, so I'm pretty sure there's another event to come from both teams. I think Xbox has got another one coming as well before launch, to really seal the deal and drive home the kind of benefits and enhancements that both these consoles are going to bring, because one of the most important parts about getting people to upgrade is about understanding what that does. And I think that we still need to see more about what you can do when you've got your existing library that fully works, that you can either digitally just download to this box, or if you've got the original disc and the disc version like myself, you just stick it in and play that version. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more information on just what the consoles are going to do and how they're going to entice you to keep your games but move up to the next generation. And PSVR is a really good and standout USP for the PlayStation brand, and I still love VR titles, so I'm not going to step away from that anytime soon, and it's one area I'm going to focus on once I get my hands on PS5 and I cover it in detail. One of the bigger developments and announcements at the show was obviously the long-rumoured, long-in-development, long-since-known Harry Potter title, which we now know is going to be called Hogwarts Legacy. Obviously, this is a combination of teams developing this from Avalanche to Portkey Games, but fundamentally, this is the Hogwarts set in the early 1800s, and it's your adventure as a good wizard, as a bad wizard, starting in this world and learning your skills and moving through. It's set in the early 1800s, and obviously, it will have a huge impact and a huge fan base that will really get behind it. Visually, I'm very impressed with the quality on offer here already. The materials are excellent, the lighting quality, the density of the objects themselves, the triangle count is huge, the amount of soft penumbra shadows, the amount of detail in areas and the light sources, the amount of shadow casting light sources is all very impressive. Even more so the fact that it's running at 60 FPS, which obviously is not a standard option, and this will undoubtedly run at 30 FPS on both the PS4 and Xbox One because it is a cross-generation title after all. So it instantly highlights that these open world titles, they can be more intense in terms of the CPU, the simulation, the density, the draws. All those areas can put more strain on the CPU. So that's entirely an option now with these Zen CPUs and the additional benefits they bring. But the art style is a good combination of cartoon-based, realistic-based. The lighting and materials are excellent. There's a beautiful shot when you're flying your Pegasus horse outside. You can see some dips and frame drops there, and this is the shot I'm on about now. This little shot looks great. So yeah, there's a few dridders and slowdowns in the trailer itself, so I'm sure there's work to come. It's not going to be due out until 2021, so it's too early to get excited, but it is of a level of a first party title from a bunch of new teams, so I really am looking forward to just what it does. I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I'm sure this will be impressive and very popular, and I love that combination between, like I say, Fable, Lord of the Rings meets Harry Potter, and that medieval style look of it. It does look impressive, and I'm sure it will really push the boat out next year, even if it's a cross-gen game. And there's even a little hint of Deep Down here from Capcom with the dragon and the fire. Love it.
Will reveal what you stand for. The choices you make now will define the legacy of Hogwarts.
The other big reveal was finally Square Enix revealed Final Fantasy 16. Now, we don't even know if it's going to come out in 2021, and this was the only video in the whole release that was actually running on a PC emulating the PS5. So whatever that means, who knows, but it looks exceptional, and I think Square Enix yet again have knocked it out of the park with their character models, their detail, their animation system, and their cinematography is some of the best out there. This really looks good because it's, again, harking back to more of a mythical, ancient style look. It's got very much a Game of Thrones feel to it. Absolutely, that's pretty obvious straight away, the little child and the death and the gore and people dying. So looking forward to... I am looking forward to the fact that it's going back to more to that medieval King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table, medieval feel to it overall, and not that modern mythical, magical, mystical beasts mechanics and all that. And there is definitely a contrast between the certain sections of the trailer. There's bits that look like they're pre-rendered, which you saw earlier, and bits in the game which don't. So not too sure whether they're still using their same Luminous engine or they're using Unreal Engine 4. I would assume they're using Unreal Engine 4, but it looks like they're using ray trace reflections. You can see it here. There's no obvious signs of screen space reflections with the occlusion issues and the foreground and background issues popping in here. This creature battle, you can see there's little flashes of alpha catching up. There's points where some of the alphas doesn't show up as well, and obviously that beginning part with the reflection in the eyeball, there's certain areas and cutscenes where it's showing that as well. So pretty sure they're possibly using ray trace reflections here, maybe using it more for lighting and shadows. Again, the cinematics and the cutscenes here look of a really high quality. Square's passion for hair is evident throughout. It's a Japanese thing, their hairstyles, their flamboyant hairstyles, and the combat and the action looks really different and new and exciting, and I'm hoping it's not fully turn-based, it's free flow, it looks like it is. So the variety of creatures on offer, the variety, the size of them, the open world, the aspect, and the detail in that world, and the animation and the gore, like I say, all of it intrigues me because it looks different and sufficiently pushing things forward, which I think some of the Final Fantasy games kind of sometimes go around this circular loop. So it's a big title, and it's exclusive to PS5 for a certain amount of time. Again, there's confusion around PC version appearing and then not appearing, so it's running on a PC, so let's hazard a guess that it's going to come out as a timed exclusive and then launch on Xbox and PC later on. That's fine, that happens all the time. People get the knickers in a twist about it, I don't know why. This is a business after all, and a business means you have to make money, and enticing people to buy a piece of hardware is done by selling them the best software. It's always better if things were launched on every piece of hardware. That's not always viable, that's not always sensible, and if you don't like cross-generation, then it's always not the best option either. So you can't have your cake and eat it, even though it's a stupid saying. I mean, who wants a cake they can't eat? It's true. So if you don't like it, wait. If you do, buy the PS5 and play it. It's a choice.
Enough.
Well, we go from one big boy to another. Yes, one of the big surprises of the show, well, not to me, because I actually knew about this title from a while ago. I was told about it in terms of it would be shown at some point this year. It was God of War. Unfortunately, that information was slightly wrong because it wasn't actually shown. So, as great and as amazing as God of War Ragnarok was, and I think a lot of people, myself included, very excited to see this, and I've heard very good things about this, and a few other titles that I tweeted about a while ago, they weren't shown, so there's still things that, if they are true, and this turned out to be true, then get excited, there's some good stuff coming, but this is a title that I'm really looking forward to that they show. I hope they show it before the end of the year, but if not, in the start of the new year. This will be coming sometime late in 2021, I would imagine. I think the Sony Santa Monica team are one of the best things of the worldwide studios, and they really smashed it with one of the best reboots and rebirths of a character ever. Just hit so many great beats in terms of gameplay. That was one of the biggest parts, and obviously the story. So Ragnarok really has my attention. Like I say, though, not a big fan of teasers like this because it's literally nothing but text. So it would have been better if they'd have just shown, even if it was only like 5-10 seconds of Kratos walking into a room, just to see the visual quality and just get those hype levels up. So it's a shame, but I'm sure we'll see more next year. Maybe even, luckily enough, at the end of the year on the next event. And then we come to a full exclusive on the PlayStation 5, the full gameplay reveal of Demon Souls on the PS5, and this is a title that obviously really set the benchmark for Japan Studios from Software, and pushing that started the whole Dark Souls when Demon Souls kicked off. So the fact that Bluepoint have now picked this back up and they're injecting this with their magic, their skill to reimagine an old classic and bring it into the modern age, and this has all been evident by, completely redoing all the texture materials and the quality, and then actually moving beyond that to just remaking the entire game with their own proprietary engine and literally recreating the original. And this is what they've done here. They've obviously brought in much better physics, detail, lighting, ray trace lighting, so there's lighting and shadows. There might even be reflections, I'm not sure, but they've certainly reimagined a classic here and brought it right kicking and screaming to the modern age. And this is evident here with the ogre battle, where the light casts down, you can see that subsurface scattering, that pinky look on his skin, the little wobbly belly and the floppy arms, and all the physics and destruction as the rocks get hit and crumble down. You've got so much water and physics detail on the floor, and this is what I'm looking forward to, more than just the visual quality, but actually adding more to the game. Look at the amount of interaction here. So that's what I want to see: more AI, more destruction, more procedural animation, more environmental animation, physics, destruction, calculating those collision detections and for longer in a game, so characters stay there, things break down, rubble breaks down, and that's what's impressive to me. Using fire as simulation, a fluid simulation. This is what I want to see far more. And the creatures in here, the fire, the way the animation moves, the amount of detail shown in this short clip, and then the little flash part at the end really highlights that this is what a next-gen title looks and feels like, and this is going to be ready day one to play. And I'm sure this will be one of the biggest titles of the PlayStation 5, if not the launch title, because I think it really hits the nail on the head to push forward that love and thirst for a next-generation game with an old twist and that new visual quality. And you can see this, they're using the hardware, all the things I just mentioned, that physics, the 60 FPS options in there, 4K resolutions, but also the speed of loading. Look at the warp portals when you go. We're talking less than a second to go from one area to another, which took ages on the old game, and you've got a loading screen. So you can see already that not only are we going to enjoy these titles, but it's more than visuals. There's a significant leap right from day one in terms of the quality you're playing and how the game plays out, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Yes, it's still the same Demon Souls games. Yes, you still die in a heartbeat, but the fact that it's being reimagined and it's using the hardware already so soon just really sets the benchmark for what I think will be an amazing generation that will finally push beyond what last generation was, which was largely a significant increase in visuals, but not a massive increase in terms of interactivity and quality and AI and all those areas that I grew up, every couple of years there was these big leaps in terms of going from going from 2D to 3D, you know, things like Virtua Racing, seeing it in the arcades and then seeing it on your Mega Drive, the Super FX chip on the SNES, you know, then things like Half-Life or Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid, so many games where they just, you know, the Metal Gear Solid was probably one of the huge standout moments, but the fact that you could have characters hunt for you, find you, you could chuck them overboard, shoot them, wing them, that's what I miss. We didn't have, in my opinion, many elements like that in this generation, and that's what I'm looking forward to. More than just visual improvements overall. As great as ray trace reflections are, as excellent as all these lighting techniques are, smoke and fire being fluid simulations, water being more interactive, the objects being destructible, you know, being able to hide behind a wall and it gets blown away. Going back to some of the old games that we saw on PS2 like Red Faction. So I want that kind of leap this generation. Much better AI. So what things like Naughty Dog managed to do with the PS4 on that, you know, the Jaguar CPUs and the AI techniques in both Uncharted and The Last of Us. I want to see that. And there's a team that, you know, we're going to see something in The Last of Us 2. I'm sure there'll be a remastered version of that coming. And I'm sure there'll be many remasters that people will complain. But I just want to bring it all the way back to the last piece of the conversation. And that is about the fact that cross-generation and what you can expect. Now, we've always had cross-generation titles. The last generation, everyone seems to forget that most of the titles that launched at launch were cross-generation titles. There was a few exclusives, but it's absolutely typical for a generation to have a cross-generation launch with some exclusives, and Sony still got them. So Ratchet & Clank is an exclusive, Demon's Souls is an exclusive, so there's titles here that will only be playable on a PS5, and there's more that hasn't been announced yet, but most of the titles on the Xbox are going to be exactly the same. So all I'm trying to say is don't get too hung up on worrying about the very first few months of a new generation. There's exclusives here, there's things that are being launched that are just exclusive to the console using that technology. And also, just remember that the games you know at the moment, you don't know all the details. So there's games here that will be using all the additional features of the PS5 and obviously the Series X and the Xbox Series S as well. So loading will be improved, streaming of assets will be improved, quality of textures will be improved. They're using the haptics on the actual controller itself, the 3D audio, all of that spatial tempest engine, the spatial audio on the Xbox as well. So there's so much more that we haven't seen on these games that you'll have to sit down and play to really gain the experience they're delivering. And I think that's what everyone needs to take into account. You can't have these huge, very expensive, massive teams working on all this stuff and expect it all to be free. That said, you're getting the same price console that is significantly more powerful and offers a bigger leap than you did last generation, and that had exactly the same problem, and both teams did the same thing. So all I'm saying is don't think that the word anti-consumer, and I've seen this a lot of times online, people are misusing it. It doesn't mean what a lot of people seem to think it means, but I'm not going to get into that unless people want me to talk about business, and that's boring, but that is what I do a lot of. So let's just wait and see what the games deliver, and don't get too panicked about generations being consistent, because that doesn't make any sense for anybody. But there's lots of games, there's lots of good stuff here. Abe's Odyssey was another good one. I love this game. So Soulstorm looks superb. I love the fact that the enemy in this game literally looks like the main enemy, Alien, from the age-old 80s horror flick that was made by Pete Jackson, Bad Taste. Everyone remember that film? This is the alien guy when he comes down, and if you haven't seen it, Google it. Just if you're squeamish, you probably won't like it, but it's a funny film, and as soon as I saw this guy's face, that's instantly what I thought of, even down to the suit that he's wearing. I wonder if he's got a big sticky out butt. Anyway, I've gone completely off the rails and lost the plot. Hope you guys and girls enjoyed this long-winded talk about PlayStation 5. What did I think of the event? I thought it was really good. I thought they did a great job of delivering a good selection and smorgasbord of games that you might want to jump into, some you might not. And there's also stuff here that can just kick off that next stage. And I think we now know the price, we now know the launch date, we now know most of the launch titles. So we just now need to see what the boosts are in terms of the native titles running on the new hardware, and then the UI. What are they settling on? That's what I'm going to say on the UI. What are they settling on as a UI? But there's more to come. There's more to come from Xbox. Did you enjoy the show? Did you not enjoy this show? What was good? What was bad? All those good stuff. Please leave it in the comment section below. Chat to me over on Twitter. And I'll catch you guys and girls on the next one.
My tummy's growling. I'm hungry. Stop!
プレイステーション